Welcome to the celebration of National Poetry Month. We have some great poets that have left a long legacy for us to appreciate and learn from. Now, this next poet is someone you probably haven't heard of, but he was outstanding. He is one of the great poets in American history. And I'm going to start you with a quote about this man named Henry Dumas. Okay, now in 1968, a young black man, Henry Dumas, was shot and killed by a policeman in a Harlem subway station in a case of mistaken identity. Before that happened, however, he had written some of the most beautiful, moving, and profound poetry and fiction that I have forever in my life read. He was 33 years. He had completed work the quality and quantity of which are almost never achieved in several lifetimes. He was brilliant, he was magnetic, and he was an incredible artist. This was written by Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison, one of the most accomplished writers in American history, had this to say about Henry Dumas, who was killed at the age of 33. He wrote some beautiful poetry. Now, I'm going to share one of his. These are a couple of books of poetry that Henry Dumas did, and one of his fellow classmates. He was born in Arkansas. He was at Southern Illinois University teaching, and one of his fellow teachers, after his death, had a lot of his poetry published. And this is one of the poems that a lot of people really loved. It's kind of a romantic poem, if you will. The title is Love Song by Henry Dumas. Beloved, I have to adore the earth. The wind must have heard your voice once. It echoes and sings like you. The soil must have tasted you once. It's laden with your scent. The trees honor you in gold and blush when you pass. I know why the North Country is frozen. It has been trying to preserve your memory. I know why the desert burns with fever. It has wept too long without you. On hands and knees, the ocean begs up the beach and falls at your feet. I have to adore the mirror of the earth. You have taught her well how to be beautiful. That was Henry Dumas, and the poem was titled A Love Song. He was a great poet, a great writer, a great artist. Toni Morrison thought he was one of the best ever. His life cut short at the age of 33 in a subway station at 125th and Lenox in New York with a mistaken identity from the police. We go on to the next great poet. This is one of the most known poets of today, Maya Angelou. We all know the great Maya Angelou. She passed recently. What a body of work she had. Also coming from Arkansas. And she's worked with Dr. King's SCLC, Malcolm X. She's danced. She's done so many wonderful things. But poetry is one of the things she has done best. And we all are familiar with, I think, her greatest poem. And this was the name of it. And Still I Rise. So many people are already so familiar with Maya Angelou and her great poetry that I feel that I'm almost ashamed even trying to look it up to repeat it, because it's been read so many times and memorized and everything by so many. So let me go on to what she did on Inauguration Day for Bill Clinton, 1993. She recited a poem that she wrote called On the Pulse of Morning by Maya Angelou. Now, you know she was leaving a trail for someone to come behind her, and we're going to get into Miss Amanda Gorman in a moment. But Maya Angelou, what a trail of great poetry and pride and history she left for us, and we treasure Maya Angelou, who is always rising up from anything that is trying to hold her down. So we cherish her. Now, I did not utilize many songwriters Of course they're poets. Marvin Gaye, of course, What's Going On. Stevie Wonder, Living for the City. There's so many musicians I could have used their poetry because they wrote their own songs and they were great poets. But this particular guy, Tupac Shakur, who I think is the greatest rapper in the history of our country, he wrote this book of poetry, and the title of it is The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And the last poem in his book, Tupac Shakur's, was this. It was in the event of my demise. In the event of my demise, when my heart can beat no more, I hope I die for a principle or a belief that I have lived for. I will die before my time because I feel the shadow's depth so much I wanted to accomplish before I reach my death. I have come to grips with the possibility and wiped the last tear from my eyes. I loved all who were positive in the event of my demise. Tupac Shakur wrote some great poetry, and we should remember him not only as a great rapper and a musician, but also as a great poet. Last of all, I leave you with the hottest poet now that we know, Miss Amanda Gorman, who was raised in Watts, California. Her mom was a teacher, and she taught her daughter well, who graduated cum laude from Harvard University. And she recited a poem for President Joe Biden at his inauguration, and it was fabulous. She also recited a poem at the Super Bowl. Who does that? Who does a poem at the Super Bowl, maybe the biggest event in the country, if not the world? I tell you who does that. This lady was so phenomenal, and she's such a great poet. But look at the trail that she is following. So I conclude the study of poetry and the celebration of poetry during this month. We have traveled from 1773, Phyllis Wheatley, and we go all the way to 2021 with Amanda Gorman. So we celebrate all of this as a part of the celebration of the National Poetry Month in America. I'm the Stinger, Mike Glenn. I appreciate you sharing this time and these stories and this poetry with me. Good day.